We got a lot of stuff to get into, so the best person to talk about all of those things with is the one and only Tom Moore from the Bucks County Courier-Times. Joins us right now on on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. I posted for Mike Gill on the Sports Bachelor, and I forgot what show that I'm on. Tom, how you doing today?
All right. How are you, Josh?
I'm doing pretty good. And I want to ask you first about the Phillies because, right now this is a team that this time of year, we're not used to them being in contention. This is a time of year everyone's focusing on football, right? It's football, Eagles, college football. But now the Phillies are just kind of, feeling like they're tapping you on the shoulder every time they say, we're still here, we're still hanging around. And it almost feels like just strange, Tom, to say that the Phillies are this close as they are in the division and the wild card.
Yeah, I mean, I think actually last year they weren't in a much different situation, but it felt very different because they kind of were, if not in a free fall, they just were kind of fading,
Right.
and it just didn't feel good. This team is so almost schizophrenic because they lose 2 games to bad teams. They get swept by a bad team. Then they come back and beat a good team. And right when you think they're out of it, then they're back in it. Like, it's like, well, the real Phillies, please stand up. They do things where you think, they're legit. They can do it. Then the next thing they stumble and play terribly. They blow a game, lose the first 2 of the series to the Marlins, who are another team going nowhere. And then they come back and, with Monday night and, have a terrific performance by Wheeler, and it's 4-0. And then they went crazy and, end up winning 12-0. They had a big, I guess, 8th inning and, pulled away. And it was a laugher. They could use Matt Moore the last 2 innings. So it feels different. And they're also, it's also that, they're close. They're within 2 games or so in the wild card and the division. So they kind of have 2 ways of getting there. Whereas, last year was pretty much, there was only one chance, and that seemed to be kind of fleeting at this point.
Also, what does it say to you that, Rhys Hoskins goes down, he's done for the year. That was a huge part of their offense. And then all of a sudden the offense picks up. They had that streak of games where they were scoring at least 7 runs in every game. And then even now in the last few games, they just busted up the Brewers yesterday. This is a very good Brewers team. What does it say to you the offense just woken up like this?
Yeah, well, the offense has really been streaky, Josh. I thought the offense would be more consistent and more 5-6 runs a game. But like you said, they've had stretches where they score 7, 8, 10 runs, in a while. And then, but before that stretch, when you look back, I think they averaged like 2.4 runs in the previous 10 games. Like it's really not very logical. Harper's been really, really good. But, they didn't have Gregorius and, they've had a lot of guys that kind of in funks. Real Muto really hadn't been hitting the ball very well. Center field, they weren't getting much from. It's a funny thing. They certainly miss his power, Hoskins' power. Defensively, I don't think they miss him as much, at first base, but certainly putting him in there wherever, 4th or 5th or wherever, you could put him between, Harper and, Gregorius or however you wanted to do it, and really protect him and he'd get some good pitches to hit. So, it's impressive. But like I said, this team, with just under 4 weeks to go, you don't know what's going to happen. The bullpen, has been better. Saturday's game, notwithstanding with Archie Bradley. Really, Hector Neris has been tremendous the last month. He's really solidified the 7th, 8th inning, for them after he really struggled and lost the closer's role again. It's just such a funny year where there's so few things you can say for sure what we're going to get because they've been so inconsistent and so up and down, and what you think is going to be a strength has been a strength on and off, and other areas where you didn't think would be a strength, have been strengths, at times. It's been a very odd year, but they're certainly within striking distance of, making the playoffs for the first time in 10 years.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch as it goes down the stretch. Tom Moore from the Bucks County Courier-Times joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at Tom Moore Philly. Tom, I want to switch over to the Sixers because I thought that what you wrote about the history of the Sixers making trades And the situation that Daryl Morey is in right now with the Sixers is a very important aspect of this because, this city has a history of being burned when it comes to some of these situations. And yeah, Daryl Morey wasn't here for all those situations, but when you have guys like Moses Malone, guys like Charles Barkley, guys like Allen Iverson, icons, Hall of Famers, and then you get what you get back in return for those deals, it makes the Ben Simmons situation even a little more uncomfortable for Sixer fans.
Yeah, I wrote about mainly Barkley, Moses Malone, and Fultz, either stars or high-profile players where they kind of had to trade him. They needed to. Now, Barkley wanted out in '92. He wasn't happy. He didn't think ownership was committed to winning. So he, and they got Jeff Hornacek, Andrew Lang, and Tim Perry, one very good player and two, average NBA players for a guy who the next year was the MVP of the league and led the Suns to the NBA Finals where they lost to Michael Jordan in 6 games. And Moses Malone, the situation was in '86, he had 2 years left on his contract. But the weird thing was in those days, there was no salary cap. So if you had an expiring contract, that was looked at as a bad thing because it was looked at that you had no value. So they traded him 2 years before his contract was up, but just got swindled and got nothing for him. And really, Markelle Fultz, the only good thing out of the Markelle Fultz deal, another number 1 overall pick, was that got the maxi, in return. But yeah, when you're trading a star or high-profile player, if you don't get another star or high-profile player in return, you almost always lose the trade. And that's, unless it's Lillard or they're fortunate, get another all-star caliber player, it might not, it probably isn't going to be equal value, at least close to what Daryl Morey thinks is equal value. The question is, when does he take the best offer? Does he want to do it before the start of training camp in 3 weeks? If he can't get what he wants, is he willing to wait and then, be a distraction and fines and all that stuff? We'll find out.
Tom, how much of it also is the fact that I just mentioned a little earlier, Morey wasn't here for those other situations. Morey's a new guy. He's a different kind of guy. We haven't had a guy like him very often in Philadelphia, a guy with his type of background. Brian Colangelo, he was a name, but he didn't really have a ton of success, right? You have some of the guys who've come in here, they didn't have the pedigree that Morey comes with, this infamy or fame, depending on who you ask, for the trades that he's made.
Well, I mean, maybe he's willing to wait. Maybe he's not going to, take 50 cents on the dollar. But, apparently he's asking for a lot. I'm guessing his asking price has dropped. You wonder if maybe he would have been better off dropping his asking price if he had a sense that maybe this was coming, that this was, Keith Pompey was going to break this, and that, now everybody knows what everyone pretty much had a good idea that they had to trade Simmons. But once this got out, his value just dropped. I mean, he can try all kinds of different things. He can wait. He could wait into the season if he wants, but it's going to be a headache and a distraction. And Doc Rivers is going to be asked about it. And the players are going to be asked about it. So, I'm sure he would like to do it, but if he's can only get, another very, very good player and a draft pick for Simmons, is he willing to do it just to cut his losses, or will he wait and see? And maybe that's where the experience comes in. Maybe he's willing to wait and see. But again, it would not be ideal. It'd be best for everybody to move on at this point. I mean, I didn't think Simmons was going to last forever, but I didn't think the divorce was going to be this quick. Let's put it that way.
I'm glad you used the word divorce, because that's part of what's going through my mind. This is a situation where it feels like it's been building, right? It's a situation that even before the situation happened in Game 7, where he didn't dunk the ball and he passed it, the free throw problems and all the weird stuff with him. Sometimes when guys like you are asking him a question at a press conference, he comes up with an answer about his resume. Like some of his answers as well have kind of painted him in this image where the fan base just doesn't like him. And I know that the players shouldn't be so bent on what the fans or everybody else thinks, but at some point, maybe you're just in a situation where there's just no winning.
Well, maybe his personality, he just seemed kind of above it all, and he didn't really show a sense of humor like Embiid, Embiid had endearing qualities you could see, he was a little kid. Simmons, whether he was trying too hard or whatever, it just seemed like he was it was beneath him. You really never had a sense of having any idea really what he was like. I don't know what Joe Embiid's like, but you at least have a sense based on how he treats us.
Right.
With Simmons, it was just short answers, stock stuff. I don't know, just very guarded. And then, as I wrote before, the Sixers just protected him so much and made excuses. And I don't think that helped the situation, too. I think that really exacerbated it. But, yeah, I mean, what were they going to do? He was the pick, the number 1 overall pick that year, unless you wanted Brandon Ingram or you wanted to trade down. He was the logical guy. And they took him. And, unfortunately, his defense and some of his intangibles, improved. But his offensive regression, late in games, and his fear of driving because he didn't want to go to the foul line really cost him. I mean, if he made half his free throws against Atlanta, they win that series easily. 50%. I'm not talking about 80%. 50%. They win that. And I mean, and that's a hard thing to get by. The Sixers were in great shape to make a run this year. And who knows if they'll be number 1 again next year. What if they're number 2 or 3 and now they got to play the Bucks or the Nets in the second round? That's a much taller task, assuming there are, no injuries or no significant injuries, than it was with the Hawks this year, which is a young team really just happy to be there.
Tom, if and when Ben Simmons is traded, where does the Heat vision of everybody watching this team turn to next? Does it fall more on Embiid? Does it turn to Tobias Harris? Where do you think the attention turns once the Simmons situation finally passes over?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it depends somewhat on what they get. If they get another core guy, which you would hope they would get another guy to be with Harris, Embiid, and Curry, let's say, in that kind of main group. But, Tobias Harris is another guy, he was fortunate in a way that Simmons was so bad in those fourth quarters, not shooting in the last 4 fourth quarters against Atlanta. He really struggled, and he was passive. And when he shot, he didn't make fourth quarter shots. He really hurt them in big games in that Atlanta series, and it kind of flew under the radar with all the Simmons hubbub and everything else going on. But for all the improvement and all the regular season stuff and thinking he could be an all-star, and you could certainly make the case, he did not play up to that level in the fourth quarter. And whether Ben Simmons is here or not, and he most certainly won't be, if they get back there, he's got to be better too.
Tom Moore joins us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN, sports columnist for the Bucks County Courier Times. Follow him on Twitter at Tom Moore Philly for more coverage. Tom, I want to bounce over to the Eagles because there's a lot of questions, a lot of expectations for this team. And I think the one thing that stands out to me more than anything is in a town that has a lot of reputations, okay? I think the one reputation that probably should stand out with this football team is, to me, there should be a connection between the idea that Sirianni and Hurts are portraying of the blue-collar work ethic and the grinding and earning your opportunity. And those things, to me, just sound like what Philadelphia sports fans always want. The Philly fans always want the guys who are earning their keep, who are going out there working hard every day. And I can't promise anybody that Sirianni is going to win X number of games his first year, but I just feel like the attitude and the culture coming into this year is just better than it was last year.
I mean, it might be. It probably is. Some, new blood. Maybe Peterson was here a year too long, and maybe he got either whether it was burned out or kind of got exposed that everything went right in 2017, and then had some bad luck and made some decisions and personnel wise and draft picks, which was not his fault. But he's a new coach. I mean, he's learning on the fly. What's he going to do? When it's 4th and 2 with 1 minute and 40 seconds to go in the second quarter of a 3-point game and the ball's at midfield, and, do you call timeout? There's a lot of things, and that stuff happens a lot. So he's got to kind of figure things out. Is he going to be aggressive like Peterson was? Is he going to be more conservative? Is he going to attack? Is he going to run the ball more, which Peterson always said he would do, but tended to revert just like Andy Reid to throwing the ball. So I'm just curious more just to see how he calls the game and what he does. And, who's his main tight end? Is he going to go 11 personnel, 2 tight end a lot? Is he going to get Ertz and Goddard on the field a lot? One backfield. Is he going to go empty backfield a lot? Is he going to throw the ball on first down a lot? Is he going to take more shots down the field, which I really thought Peterson did not do, and that really hurt them last year. They didn't keep defenses honest, and defenses knew that they could pack the 7-8 guys near the line of scrimmage and didn't really have to worry too much about throwing the ball down the field. You got to use the whole field in this day and age with as big and strong and fast as these guys are. You have to keep them honest.
A lot of people seem to think that this team, at least the people on the outside, think that this team is not going to be that good this year. I personally believe that they're going to be better than the 4 wins that they had last year. What is your expectations for the Philadelphia Eagles, Tom?
It's really hard to say. I mean, if I had to pick a number, I would say like maybe 7-10, something like that. The division still is not great. Their schedule, they do play, some not great teams. It just kind of depends. And a lot of it is how do the veterans handle, how do the Brandon Grahams and Fletcher Coxes, how are they handling, kind of being in college again almost, and hearing about let's get 1% better every day, all that stuff, which I understand, and which you have to have a mantra and you be that way. But these guys have been in the league for 8, 9, 10 years. They've been through it. They've won Super Bowls. Brandon Brooks, Jason Kelsey, those guys, Lane Johnson. How do they handle things? Are they conduits with the younger players in Sirianni? Do they buy in? Which I'm sure they do now, but if things don't go well, or if they don't like the way things are going, how will that go? It's just very intriguing because everything's new. There's none of this, Sirianni's never done this before. His staff has never done this before. His players have never done it with him before. So there's so many things that are unknowns. It's really hard to say. But I think 6 or 7 wins is reasonable to expect, barring, a disastrous situation or some really good fortune, which could be the other way.
Give him a follow on Twitter at Tom Moore Philly. Check out all of his work with the Bucks County Courier-Times, sports columnist over there covering all the Phillies sports teams. And, of course, he joined us right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Tom, always appreciate you jumping on the conversation.
All right, Josh, you take care.